All right. Welcome again. This is Psych Monkey, or I should say, I am Danny Ray Crum Jr. with Psych Monkey watching over my shoulder. This is going to be the final interview on the perspectives regarding stress during this pandemic. Today, we are going to have join us a licensed school psychologist in the state of West Virginia who serves school districts, but also has a private practice and has served at the university level. When he knocks on that door, I'll start the recording back and introduce you. For now, go get your drink, take a break, be back in less than 30 seconds. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honor is knocking at the door. Let's let him in. Oh, we just lost him. All right, we'll try again. Hang on. There he is. You went in and out there, man. I thought we lost you. So how you doing? Okay. Working on some technical issues here, folks. Somebody do a drum roll. That's our little cliche thing. Let me see if I have any powers, Michael. Let's see. Nope, no powers. I can rename you, but that's about all I can do. Where are you at? Allow record. Hang on, I'm gonna pause this, folks, while we work out technical difficulties.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, we worked out our technical difficulties. Let me introduce my friend to you, Michael Powell. Now, Michael, just to let you know, I've already introduced the channel, done my shtick. You might see my buddy over my shoulder here. So you've gotten to know me a little bit. You know that even though I'm an older guy, the maturity level is still very young, so I still like to joke around and prank. So that's me poking a little fun at psychology. But I'm telling you, buddy, that's the hottest trending video when I put that monkey head on. I don't know what that says about the audience out there, but you are actually my final interview or interviewee in this series of perspectives on stress during this pandemic. You're going to culminate a group of people that has included a former West Virginia Supreme Court magistrate, social worker, executive on some school boards and consultant for counties, counselors, you name it, school counselors and licensed professional counselors.
Wow.
So you're in very good company. And look, I could say the wild thing about you as well. And for those of you watching, and Michael, this has stepped outside of our circle. I mean, this is on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I've had people on YouTube subscribing that I don't know who they are, and I'm more than grateful for them, refer to themselves as fans and everything else. So no pressure here, Michael, but this is technically a worldwide audience, buddy, you know? So
Awesome.
tell you what,
No pressure.
no pressure at all. I gave a basic intro of who you are, but why don't you introduce yourself? Give us a synopsis of your resume, vitae, career, education, all that. Whatever you want to share about yourself.
Sure. Currently, I'm a school psychologist here in West Virginia at Morgan County Schools. Before working in Morgan County, I was down in the southern part of the state. I've been a school psychologist since 2009, 10. I also spent a year working for the West Virginia Behavioral Mental Health Technical Assistance Center last year, where we worked with counties to help build internal capacity for helping students and their systems support students with mental and behavioral health needs.
Are you referring to the Autism Training Center at Marshall, or is that different?
It's part of the Autism Training Center at Marshall. It's a collaboration between the ATC and the West Virginia Department of Education Office of Special Programs.
Okay.
So I spent a year doing that. It was a little bit too much travel for me. So I wanted to come back here to Morgan County, that's where I live. Better for myself and my family. That's kind of what guides all my decisions, is what's best for my family. As I was going through my graduate school, I worked at a treatment facility, level 3 treatment facility for adolescent youth.
Okay.
My wife and I were foster parents, fostered, I think, 10, 11 kids.
Wow.
So we spent some time doing that before we started our own family. When we started our own family, it was the stress was a little too much. So we decided that in order to be good parents, whether it to be our own or to foster kids, it was best for us to focus on our own family. So we haven't done that, but it did give me some very valuable insight and kind of changed my whole approach to looking at behavior and how you address behavior, as did working at that treatment facility. So that was kind of a game changer for me to look deeper into understanding behavior, understanding stress, understanding the brain, as did just having kids. They will put everything you think you know
All those
upside
textbooks are
down.
great until you got to get in the middle of that pond, aren't they?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So that was another thing that kind of helped me keep myself grounded and realize that as soon as you think you know, you don't know anything. So you got to constantly try to be learning, constantly trying to better yourself and understand what's going on.
Right.
Some kind of trainings, personal things that I've done that have had significant impacts on me. I just finished up Bruce Perry's neurosequential model for educators,
Yeah.
trainer series,
Yep.
which was very awesome. And I've been following his stuff also. He's been doing a lot of free webinars, office hours during this COVID pandemic. So I finished that. He's a big influence on the way I think, the way I try to approach behaviors and help kids, help myself, and help others. As is Stuart Shanker. He has a self-reg process, he calls self-reg model. And I went through his facilitator training, which again was another big game changer for me as far as how I approach helping kids, helping teachers, helping whoever it is, even if it is myself, which oftentimes that's who needs the most help.
You'll have to
So that's kind of a
send me
background for me.
You'll have to send me a link to Shanker, you say it is?
Yeah, Stuart Shanker.
I know you sent me Dr. Perry's stuff, and we've actually incorporated that in our SWAT team. So we're sort of doing our own little group trainings since we're the ones that come to in-house for consulting. For those of you who don't know, and Michael has by no means given his full resume here, Michael also helps us out in Berkeley County. Some of you already know that. As a consultant, as a school psychologist, evaluator, trainer, you name it. But Michael provided me the link to Dr. Perry's training series, and we've taken that as a SWAT team, like, Michelle Toss team,
Yeah, nice.
I think we're up to video number 4. So every week we're reviewing a video, and then later on in the month, I hope to share what we've learned with our school counselors and our social workers, things like that. But
awesome, that's a great idea.
I would love it if you send me Dr. Shanker's stuff as well.
Sure,
now,
sure.
Michael, one of the things you left out, or a couple of things, if I may. Like I said, you also help us out at Berkeley County. If I may, I hope I don't get myself in trouble, but am I correct? You also have a private practice going while you're doing all this other stuff. I'm worried you're not doing enough to keep busy, Michael. Okay,
Yeah, I do have a private practice, School Solutions, where it's just a little bit on the side, where, like you said, helping in different counties, bordering counties. Sure. Also gives me opportunity to help people outside the school system that may not be in Morgan County, so families and things like that. It also enables me to work through birth to 3. So I also do birth to 3.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Michael. For those people watching, because again, like I said, the viewers have stepped outside of our little circle. In West Virginia, what Michael's talking about. So, for example, my licensure in West Virginia is specifically locked into Berkeley County, and I'm more than happy with that. But West Virginia, so my licensure is through the Department of Education. But West Virginia also has a board of examiners. If you want to step outside of the district that you are serving, you have to go through the board of examiners, and they have different levels. So Michael has licensure through the Department of Ed as well as through the board of examiners, which allows him to serve a specific school district and then really any school district that needs him. So that's
and also, so there's 2 different levels there. Level 1, you're able to work within in contract for school systems, and level 2 is where you're able to open up, kind of hang your shingle kind of thing, open up your own business. And that's what I was able to get to.
You've achieved the highest level. Yeah. See, the rules in West Virginia are different than Pennsylvania, which is interesting because the licensure certification process is, I think, just as hard, maybe harder in Pennsylvania. But to hang up your shingle, the requirements are not as demanding. You know what I mean? So long story. That's another conversation. All right. So here's sort of the script, Michael. Here's how we sort of launched into this after everybody's introduced themselves. And anytime you want to go back to tell them more about yourself, please do, or what you do, or what you think is important. I've simply put the question to people, asking them what is their personal and/or professional experience, opinion, perspective, as I said earlier, on the stressors, and not to use a term or impose a term, anxieties that you yourself, families you serve, people you know, institutions, what kind of stressors and anxieties are people facing now during this pandemic?
Yeah. Um, I mean, the biggest part is, and I heard it on a couple of webinars I've been on, is not working from home, not homeschool, but trying to do work from home and trying to do school from home, because basically we haven't really changed much of our expectations as far as work and school. We're still trying to kind of meet this threshold, like it isn't much different than if we were actually in the office in the school building. So that's been a major stressor for some of the people I've been working with. For myself, personally, I've adding a little bit more knowledge about myself. I have 4 young daughters, and so
I
that
forgot that,
balancing
buddy.
that, four. So ages 11, 7, and 3.
Well,
So
Michael,
I
I'm
got a
telling you right
sixth
now,
grader,
we're all
fifth grader, and
impressed
a first grader.
sorry, brother, we're all impressed you're awake. Okay.
Yeah.
That just exhausted me here in 4. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead, buddy.
No, that's all right. So it's, trying to keep up with the curriculum that they're required, or the assignments they're required for each of those different grade levels. All my girls, I mean, not to brag, but they're very smart. They do great in school, but it's interesting to see how much they struggle here at home. And the teachers aren't expecting a lot of them. It's mainly review concepts that they're putting out there. However, because of the format, because of the novelty, because of the stress of the situation, they're not as independent as they would be at school. They're not handling the stressors of what's being asked of them as well. And so that's had to change. I've had to change the way that I think about it, the way I approach it. I'll be honest. Initially, I was like, this stuff. This stuff. Come on, sit down there and do that.
Right.
And I know a lot of information about stress, but applying it is a whole different thing. So I'm lucky if I do like 50% bad dad moments and 50% good dad moments.
Right.
I'm having a good day there. So it's the key for me is just keep trying. So that's been a big shock to me.
So what my ears hear you saying, and I'm translating, correct me if you disagree. What my ears hear you saying is that one of the stressors is actually adapting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why do you suppose that is for the children and for the adults? Why do you suppose? Because you and I presumably are well-educated people. We've got life experience, so we've had to be able to adapt in order to survive, right? Children, they've learned to adapt. Why do you think people are struggling with adapting?
Well, first off, novelty. Any novelty is initially processed as a threat. It's initially kind of gives you a little shot of stress, a little shot of that stress response. And so in order for us to use our higher parts of our brain to kind of tamp that down, to say, it's no big deal, we have to be in a somewhat regulated state ourselves. And in the current situation, if you imagine it as, let's say it's a bucket. And when that bucket's full is when you're regulated. You have the energy you need to deal with the stress that is coming at you. And basically we're just getting scoop after scoop out of our bucket because of the stressors that are around us. And so when this novelty hits us, even though it is simple novelty, it's harder for us to adapt. It's harder for us to regulate ourselves and think with the reflective, with the rational part of our brain. We're more likely to be using those parts of our brain that are not exactly survival, but they're not exactly the best, most rational and reflective parts of our brain.
All right, again, may I interject a question and what I think I'm hearing? So you sort of tied together. You had talked initially about the higher part of our brain. We need to be using that, but we're not. And then you talked about the emotionality. So people, it was interesting though, the comment you made, I never heard it worded that way, that novelty is initially perceived as a threat. That's interesting.
Mm.
So people are, I guess you could say, reacting initially or responding initially in a more emotional sense. Do you think that's because it's not a familiar thing, because it's breaking a habit? Does that cause them some dissonance or discomfort, whatever word you want to use?
Yeah, I think all that. Yeah, it's unfamiliar, it's novel, it's something new, it's different. but you're also disrupting one of the best stress modulators we have, and that's routines and rituals. And those routines, and I'm a very routine oriented person, and that's been one of my main things I'm struggling with. And to be honest, I don't think I still have gotten to a routine. And it's something that affects my ability to be the best employee, be the best dad, be the best husband, or whatever I'm supposed to be in that moment, because I rely so much on routine to help me stay regulated, to help give me this sense of accomplishment, which then adds to my energy bucket, which helps me feel better about myself, helps me deal with stress, helps me stay in that calm, regulated state. So yeah, the novelty of the change, relationships that we're missing, that's another big stress modulator. All those things are adding to our difficulty with these times.
So let me ask you a question. We're sort of, just for people who don't have the script in front of them, Michael sort of stepped into, and it may be this ebb and flow between what are the stressors and what are the coping strategies. But Michael just mentioned routine and that kind of thing, structure. But you also said a couple things I want to ask you about. But before I do, I sort of want to preface it with, it sounds like your relationships with your children are having to be redefined because it's much more of it, quantity of time wise. But I'm more curious about you, because of the comment you made. You said you're still adjusting. You haven't necessarily adapted yet. And I know there's a term out there in the literature of trauma about anticipatory anxiety. Do you think it could also be, and we'll make up our own term here, do you think that you, the families, me, all of us, for those of us who haven't exactly completely adapted yet, or even adapted successfully at any level, do you think it's because in the back of our mind, there's something that says, oh, this won't last. I'm going to wait till we get back to what it used to be. I'm going to wait till it's normal again. And if so, why do you suppose that is about us?
So thinking that maybe we're just trying to almost subconsciously write it out, wait it out kind of mentality.
Right.
Yeah.
You think that's a feasible argument?
Yeah. I mean, we want what we know, kind of that saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. So that's something, we want that familiarity. We want that routine. We want that predictability.
And for all the teachers out there watching, Michael did not just call you the devil, okay?
Yeah.
It's a metaphor. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. But that predictability is something that is needed to help us feel regulated and calmer.
Okay.
Our brain's constantly trying to predict. We think that what we perceive is kind of in the moment, but those perceptions that we have of the world have already went through different filters, and it's kind of intermingled with our predictions of what's going to happen. If we were completely reactionary to the world, then we would be tenths of a second or seconds late to everything. So what your brain has to do in order to keep up with the world, in order to keep you living at real life time, real speed, is to predict and then do error correction if needed. So if a baseball is flying at your face, if you wait to react to that baseball, it's drilling your face.
Well, I can tell you what happens if you wait, pal. I got my nose broken in second grade because that baseball. I kid you not.
There you go. You were probably stressed or thinking about something else.
No, I forgot that every bleeping baseball field in the world has a skip on that grass before it gets to the dirt. And I just didn't have the glove in the right place, man. We won't get into that story.
That's actually a perfect example, because your error prediction, when you corrected what your brain was predicting, it was too late. It wasn't predicting that skip. It wasn't calculating the grass or the terrain well enough. And that comes with practice and repetition. And that's one of the ways that we help deal with stress is through practice and repetition. And then that way, when these kind of things hit, our skills that we've practiced over and over again, that we've had repetition with, those can kind of kick in and go into auto drive to help reduce that stress and for us to better understand, better deal with current circumstances.
All right, let me ask you a question on that, because you hit on a couple things in the explanation, going all the way back to the word predicted. So do you think that one of the anxieties that people are feeling, and word how you want, I predict based on a model of life experiences. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this being a novel situation, talk about your fluid reasoning, crystallized intelligence studies. This is beautiful. This is as novel as it's going to get in my lifetime, I hope. Okay. But none of my experiences match up potentially well enough to be accurate enough on my predictions. Therefore, no matter how well I predict, I'm always going to be in error, which to me makes me think I might have some anxiety because I have no control.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and your brain's working overtime trying to figure it out.
Okay.
So again, it's just more coming out of your bucket. It's more coming out of that energy bucket you need to be regulated to deal and cope with things.
So when you talk about structure and routine, I don't want to impose and I don't want to lead you, so you go fight and think for yourself here. Are you suggesting that if I can't predict this big novel thing facing me, what I can predict is a routine or structure that I put in place to help me have some self-control?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
that's
can counterbalance.
Yeah. So, and I've kind of hit on a few of these, but a guy named Robert Sapolsky, he's a big stress researcher. He has a few different books, but he talks about, I've put them into 5 modulators of stress. So 5 things that help you either make stress better or make stress worse.
Okay.
And those are predictability, a sense of control,
Okay.
social support, so like relationships,
Okay.
a sense of improvement, that things are getting a little bit better,
Okay.
and then outlets. So those are the things when we're in times like this, how do we look at those and build those within our life? So the sense of control is kind of what you were hitting on as far as what can I control, or at least feel like I have control of, because that's the thing with stress. It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. The stress for me is completely different than the stress for you. And the stress for me changes depending on my state. So one day I might be able to handle the exact same stressor beautifully, deal with it, cope with it, adapt to it. The next day I have less energy, more stuff's going on. I might melt down and freak out or something.
Now, for the professionals, but also because I'm asking the professionals to share with families that they think might actually benefit from this, or any of the interviews, can you explain what you mean by your state? I mean, I presume you're talking about a cognitive as well as emotional, but can you explain that in lay terms?
Yeah, it's actually more of like a stress state. So are you calm and regulated? Are you alert and attentive? Are you in an alarm state, kind of that first trigger, like what's going on here?
Right.
Are you in a fear state where you're fearful of something happening? Or you're in a terror state where basically you're almost shutting down, that you're becoming overwhelmed with stress. So yes, in that state then, of course, refers to how you're functioning emotionally, how you're functioning cognitively with your thinking, how you might interact socially. So all those things play into that state. Yes, so that's exactly what I was talking about.
So how do people typically get into those states, and then how do they get out of those states, or what do they do to manage those states?
Yeah. It's individual. It's individual because of, like you kind of hit on a little bit earlier, it's your past experiences,
Okay.
the level of energy that you have in that moment. It could be also the stress in that moment, your social supports that are around you. And that's another thing that's made this more difficult, because our social structures are being broke down. And as much as we try to adapt, and thank goodness for these Zoom calls and things like that, they're also not the same as typical in-person interactions that we have every day. And they actually are adding some hitting stress every time we do these, because one, we're not used to having the intense eye contact that we have during Zoom calls. We're not used to being this close to people's face. If you and I were standing this close to each other, we'd be about 8 inches apart and tasting each other's respiratory droplets. Because of how
I'm going to give a hard pass on that, brother. Okay.
But those things, your brain, and also Zoom does a good job with the picture and the sound, as far as my mouth moving and the words that we're hearing. But there is a little bit of a lag, and so your brain is trying to process all of this, and at the same time get content and context and get some message out of it.
You know what else?
Another hidden stressor.
Well, you know what else I wondered, and I want to ask you about this, because you're hitting on this virtual world. Again, another great psychology research study potentially. I'm a big believer in the attraction principle, not just the sexual attraction, but just, camaraderie, all the levels. And there's a lot of trauma. Of course, there's a lot of literature that's been out there for years about the biochemistry and attraction between people and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of research coming out now for trauma literature about the exchange of electromagnetic energies. And I've always argued that. I've done my parlor tricks to demonstrate that, that we feed off of each other on so many levels. Pheromones, electromagnetic energy. You enter a room and you know how you feel, you know how you are thinking about this group or this place. I'm wondering what this does to interfere with that. Now, you and I have past experience together, but this isn't the same. You know what I mean? This isn't,
Yeah.
I don't get that juice of camaraderie. With no disrespect, I'm so grateful to be here with you, but not to be goofy. You walk in a room versus, I'll dare say Michael, and hopefully she does not, my ex-wife walk in a room. I'm gonna have great joy when I see you. I may not have such great joy when I see her. In all fairness to her, she wouldn't want to see me either. But, but I'm wondering how this interferes with that physical energy exchange, which can benefit us. It can also be a detriment, but it can benefit us.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. I'm definitely not up to speed on some of the things you're referring to, but I think it does just hit on that whole, again, your brain trying to get used to a novel situation. It's not getting the same kind of input that it typically does to process and predict.
Well, I think of it as a rechargeable battery. This is potentially rechargeable for me from an intellectual standpoint, possibly to a degree an emotional standpoint, but it doesn't have that holistic, in other words, the battery doesn't charge as quickly this way as it did when we personally interact. You know what I mean? But to let you know that I've always had the theory, I've just recently come upon the research, I shouldn't say recently, the past couple of years, and better experts and thinkers than I am. I've always had the theory about the energy exchange because I'm sort of a wannabe physicist, okay?
Yeah.
I'm a wannabe a lot of things, okay? But I'm a wannabe physicist, so I've always believed in that exchange of energy between living things, okay? But there is a gentleman also by the name of Michael. His name is Michael McKnight. He is he's a trauma writer that I follow on LinkedIn. Speaking of people that you and I follow, do me a favor, because I really think there might be some other professionals, even families out there. Do Sapolsky's things again, and then I have a follow-up for you.
Sure. The modulators of stress, and he might not exactly have them defined or laid out this way, but this is kind of what I've got from reading his work, reading a couple of his books. But I say there's 5 modulators of stress. Predictability. Okay. So with that, the more predictability, the better we can handle stress. Right. And again, it's predictable for us. It might not be predictable for you, but if it's predictable for me, it helps me with my stress.
Right.
Also a sense of control. So feeling like you have some kind of control. It might not be actually over the stressor like COVID, but building control into your life as far as, okay, I can control how much news I watch. I can control how many times I check, how many cases are around me. Right. That kind of sense of control can be supportive. Social supports, so the relationships that you have are also the more positive interactions you have, the stronger your ability to regulate and the less stress you'll feel from situations. Outlets, so having positive outlets, and this is something that we have to be cautious of, especially during this time. And even personally, when it first happened, I almost kind of felt like it was a weekend. So I might have had maybe one too many nights having a drink of whiskey. And then as that starts to wear on me and has its effects, I had to realize, well, it's not the weekend on Tuesday. So maybe I should truly save my sip of whiskey for the weekend. Because those kind of outlets, that is an outlet, it'll help reduce your stress in that moment. But those are one of the things that you pay for it later. And what I do is I pay for it the next day because it drains my energy more the next day or later that evening. If I've, had a drink at 3, by the time 7 o'clock rolls around, I'm tired. I'm not ready to do the bedtime rituals. I'm just wanting to go to bed myself, not put you to bed. Not you, but my children.
I got you, man. I got you. I'm sure the wife doesn't appreciate you disappearing and just going off and sleeping either. I know mine gives me a little flack if I do. Exactly. The moral of the story here, folks, there's real men out in Morgan County. I can't handle whiskey, Michael. That stuff.
Yeah. But that's
So
another one. We have to do positive outlets. So art, talking with others, getting things off our chests, exercise, being out in nature, those sort of things. Diets, as far as like eating the right kind of the right kind of food, or cooking
sure.
even is one of my actually outlets. I like to cook. I like to look for new recipes and things of that nature. And the last one is a sense of improvement. So you feel like things are improving. And so again, with this incident, you might not be looking to see improvement in the case numbers or improvement with deaths, because we don't have much control over that. But you can have improvement over, how you're eating during this time, your positive interactions with your children, your ability to get work done, you're maybe picking up a new habit and how well you're improving on that, or a new hobby, I should say. That sort of thing can also help with your stress. And again, it fills that energy bucket or battery. I like that analogy too. It gives you that recharge.
What I hear you saying is, so I mean, again, following the script, just keep people in tune here. I feel like which is great. I feel like we're sort of blending the realities of the stressors with the coping strategies and into resources, which could be people, place, or things that you can do. I hear you talking about it's a matter of perspective, and I liked the example you gave about I can't control this pandemic, but I can control how much news I watch. And then you had previously before that talked about what I ingest. I think it's very much analogous to the fact that I got to make sure I don't eat so much junk food. Okay. But I can't control the media's perspective on this. I can't control the virus, but I can control how much worry and negativity I'm putting in my brain, because that's going to affect me holistically.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. And something else, when you were talking about the sweets, it sparked something in me. Is we
Yeah.
also have to be forgiving of ourselves.
Okay.
We have to realize that our ability to maybe not pass up that sweet, or not do the exercise that we want, instead of saying, shame on me, this is a misbehavior, we got to look at it as a stress behavior. That's a sign that I'm stressed. I mean, so what do I do to reduce other stressors that'll put me in a state where I'm more likely to pass up that sweet, or to get out there and actually do my exercise, or to have more patience with my children. The more that we beat ourselves up over not doing all the things we want to do, and I'm guilty of this very much so, the more stress we have. So we can't take the self-control perspective, which is often the American way. We'll just pull up your bootstraps and self-control it away. And that has to do with self-care too. A lot of
Right.
it'd be great to do meditation and yoga and all these wonderful things that with self-care, but if you don't already have that built in your routine,
Right.
good luck just throwing that in right now.
Right.
You need to become self-regulated first. You have to first deal with your stress and get yourself to a regulated, calm state, so you can slowly fold these in and build new rituals and routines.
All right. Now you also sort of mentioned, I'm going to add a word to it. You mentioned the support network. Okay. So,
Yeah.
and I guess I just answered the question, but I would like you to elaborate. If I don't have the self-regulation, trying to do it now, all of a sudden, I'm probably going to fumble through it, maybe make things worse for myself, because I might convince myself in error of certain things. But couldn't people reach to a support network? Would it not be wise for me to call up Michael if I'm just not regulating? I know Michael knows how, and he can talk me down.
Yeah. And that goes with reducing those stressors. Yeah. Whatever helps you reduce your stress. So it's, reaching out to others, talking to them, venting. And that's a thing that even as a school psychologist and, having done therapy, some days when I'm regulated, I can be the true listener that I need to be, why my family, my wife, my kids vent to me. Other days, or let me tell you how to fix that, which we know doesn't work
Yeah.
well. So yeah, that is definitely one of them. Any way that you can begin to get a snowball kind of momentum, where you start with something small. So that might be, going to bed 30 minutes earlier, or making sure that you eat one more vegetable, or that you go for a 2-minute walk. Any way you can start building up your momentum by reducing stress and building more positive energy, then you're more likely to set yourself up to do some of the more challenging things. It's all a balance between the stress that you have and the energy that you have.
Now, I hear you using the snowball metaphor, but in this case, it's a positive. Um,
Yeah.
Listening to you talk about yourself as well, I hear you in my vocabulary, and I know it's also yours. To my mind, you're talking about mindfulness, but even more than that, I heard it with my ears, that when you're a good listener professionally, there are days you can come home and be a good listener at home, but then there are days where you come home and you just want to solve the problem. Do you think that we do that as human beings, regardless of whether people are psychologists or not, because we've maxed out our threshold? So we know we can't take anymore, so we're just going to resolve this because we can't take it into that pot. Would that
Yeah,
be a fair assessment?
yeah, it goes back to your state. You have to be in that calm, regulated state to be able to handle people's problems, to be able to have the impulse control to not just say, okay, I got it. Let me tell you what you need to do. And, again, as sometimes I think that I know what my children need to do. And even if I do know what they need to do, it's going to be much more effective if they figure it out themselves.
Right.
And that's a big part of it. Our best selves come when we are in a regulated, calmer state.
So how can parents recognize that they've maxed out for the day, not feel like a bad parent? What kind of things can they do to allow themselves that space to bring their levels down to a more regulated realm where they could be, good for interaction with their family?
Yeah. So recognize is a perfect word for it, because you first have to recognize what your signs of stress are and what your stressors are. And that then leads to how you start to reduce those. You also have to realize and recognize your kids' signs of stress and what their stressors are. So if it's at the end of the day when you're usually yelling or you're losing your temper or your patience with your children, then that's a sign. Again, that's not a misbehavior, it's a stress behavior. That's your body, that's your mind telling you you've had too much, you can't handle anymore. So instead of trying to self-control or force our way through doing more schoolwork or eating everything on your plate or no more screens, you have to realize when you need to be a little bit more flexible and forgiving with yourself.
So where can people, and again, I'm jumping ahead here to the what's and the where's kind of thing of resources, Michael. People like you and me, we have the benefit of working with people who do therapy for a living, who psychoanalyze the bejeebas out of everything, probably. So there's a lot of free therapy exchange in this field, you know what I mean? Which is a real cost saver. But for those families who don't have that, where can they go? What kind of resources are available to them?
Is related to therapy or just some of the information I'm sharing here?
Everything you're sharing here, but just in general, some of the stressors your families are thinking. So, okay, my leading prefaces, for example, some people could find you, call you up, say, hey, I want to schedule a session. You know what I mean? But beyond you and me and people like us, where can people go for that psycho-emotional support? Are the schools, for example, is Morgan County providing anything special? I know Berkeley County is trying to reach out. So.
Yeah. Of course, we're trying to link up as many resources via the internet that might be available to parents. We've provided a page of resources for parents, for students, for staff.
Can you tell them how to get to that?
Pardon?
Can you tell them how to get to that, please?
Yeah, it's on Morgan County's website, and basically, if you go to Morgan County Schools, West Virginia, it's it's like a big button right on the beginning. It says like COVID-19 resources, I believe.
Okay.
You click on that, and you'll see where it's for parents, staff, students.
Good. So it's pretty obvious. It'll be right there in front of them. Good.
Yeah,
okay.
it's right below. Like they have a picture, a running picture, and then right below it is where the link is.
Now, what kind of resources are typically listed in there? Do you know?
As far as for parents, I helped develop the self-care one. It has like a little five main points of self-care that I typed up a Word document to help that hits on the modulators of stress that I discussed here. And then it also has links to like the Child Mind Institute, the Dr. Perry stuff, and Stuart Shanker's self-reg website. Some of those resources for parents, and teachers, whoever feels like they need some self-care or just some resources out there as far as behaviors for themselves or for their kids.
Now, Dr. Perry's videos. I did not know that website before you sent to us, but obviously that's available to anybody, right? They could look that up.
Yeah.
So
That's the beauty of it. Yeah.
so there's Dr.
And
Perry. Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
I was just going to say that information that he's providing is priceless, and he usually charges a pretty penny to teach people this information.
Okay.
And so I've been trying to share it with anybody that'll listen. I know
and there is a parent toolkit at the end.
Yep, it has a parent toolkit that he had there. There's a link to his interview he did with Oprah, a link he did with other people. So I know some of it gets a little dense as far as some of the neuropsychological terms and that and those kind of things. But for the most part, it's pretty good information. In the office hours that he's been holding, he only does 20 minutes of kind of the technical stuff, and then it's just question and answer stuff. And those are open to anybody.
I think honestly though, watching those videos, I think the complexity of it, I don't think it'll be too complex for families, but I think the complexity of it might actually drive home the point that, hey, there's more going on than what I think I see. My kid's not just being a pain in the whatever. I'm not just out of control. And these are not excuses or justifications for negative behavior that affect each other. You know, you guys, you got to manage that. But it does let you know how complicated the human psyche can be. It might give people reason to pause and be a little more compassionate, you know, so.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Like I said, it was a game changer for me as I started learning his information and his kind of point of view.
So Michael, in this part of the interview, I typically give my guests an opportunity to talk about any passions you have. And I usually make some stupid old guy joke, so I'll make one here. You want to talk about bonsai tree, whatever, or tea making, or basket weaving, if you want to divulge some side of your personality that makes you more personable, or if you want to talk more on the topic at hand, or some psychology things you care about for families, things you'd like to share with them.
Yeah. Obviously a big passion of mine is the brain science, learning, and education. That is something that I get picked on quite a bit from my family and from others that know me. While they're reading novels, I'm reading textbooks. While they're listening to lots of different books, I do a lot of Audible. So I listen to a lot of books, but I also try to take a very I guess holistic perspective as far as behavior. So it's not just in the brain; it's all around us. Kind of like some of the stuff that you're referring to, how important diet is, and that's one of the things. If anybody does start to look deeper into Stuart Shanker's self-reg model, he has 5 domains of stress, 5 domains of regulation, and they're the same. It's biological, emotional, cognitive, social, and pro-social. And he always suggests that you start biological, and that biological is your immune system. It's the diet that you have, the exercise that you have, your sensory processing. All those things help again with that whole, whether it's the energy bucket or energy battery, whatever you want to refer to, making sure that we're more likely to be in a regulated state to be able to be the best people that we can be. So that's something that I guess is one of my passions is nature, cooking, trying to grow my own food, making sure what I'm putting in my body, my family's body, is as clean or as healthy as possible. I know that doesn't mean we don't have some maybe Oreos in the cabinet or things of that nature.
Yeah.
But we do the best we can. I try to reduce sugar. I try to reduce processed foods. We've seen a tremendous effect with ourselves, my wife and I, but also our kids' behavior. We see it when we go on our binges of, we got a pie, we got Oreos, and we're eating a bunch of junk. We all feel like crap, and we're all more likely to be rude and mean to each other. However, when we're outside playing, we got less screens, we're eating healthier, we're being together more often, the days go much easier. But again, I can't do that every day. Some days I got, work, my kids need to be quiet, so they need to be on a screen, and that screen doesn't keep them busy. So I might have to give them something to eat while they're there. So we got to go with the flow sometimes. We have to have that combination of structure and flexibility.
So there you got it, folks. Even the psychologist has to be a real person. You know what I mean? So, Mike, what do you want to put out there? You want to put out your private practice contact information? You want to let people know how to get a hold of you? Because even if you're not the guy for them, I know you're an ethical guy that would say, you know what, I think you might need, and you can connect them.
Yeah, I don't mind to share my information. I'm not doing any therapy besides the ones I have through Morgan County right now. With what's going on with my own family and my own workload and birth to three, I'm where I need to be. But I will give my email. And that's usually how I can help people out. The easiest is, responding by email. And I also, to be honest with you, I don't have a bunch of links to other people, but I can do my best to try to link people up. Or sometimes I send them to you who does know other people, or I send them to somebody else that has a better network of individuals.
I suppose we should divulge that. So Michael and I, running in same circles, there are times where we hand things off, and neither one of us are profiting from that. It's just, that's the way we think. It's taken me a long time. Michael just matures faster. But we've gotten to the point, dare I say, that we don't have to be the one that solves the problem. Quite frankly, we recognize that neither one of us may solve the problem. We just want to try and contribute to the solution. And we recognize, and we also accept that we don't have to be part of that team that gets to the solution. So if we aren't the right person, we do from time to time hand it off. So there's our affiliation disclaimer. All right, so your email would be, Michael?
It's school, SCHOOL, psych, PSYCH, Powell, POWELL, @gmail.com. So schoolpsychpowell@gmail.com.
That's awesome, man. Look, you and I again, this is not an arrogant compliment, but you and I mean, if we talked about everything we've ever read or understood about this could go on forever. So please feel free, and I don't want to blow up your email box there, Michael, but please feel free to reach out to him. Smart guy, ethical, competent, compassionate. He's got the 3 factors that I think are most important in any professional in this field. So please reach out to him, and take advice what he said. So for those from Berkeley County or anywhere else listening, go to your school website. In all likelihood, because this is a pandemic issue, hopefully all the school systems are doing something like that, putting stuff on their website to link you to other supports. So, Michael, let me say goodbye to everybody. Hang in there with me. I'm going to stop the recording. I appreciate everybody watching.